All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Camila Grant, and I want to thank you for joining us for the AFRI Center of Excellence for Meat and Poultry Processing and Food Safety Research and Innovation informational webinar. So the topics that we're going to cover today, first I'm going to introduce you to the program staff, as well as give you a very brief overview of NIFA, as well as an overview of the program. We'll talk a little bit about the application information and some resources that will be available to you, as well as the purpose and priorities of this particular program. We'll give a couple of application details, tell you a little bit about the application evaluation process, as well as, of course, leave some time at the end for your questions, comments, and concerns. So as many of you may know, there have been a lot of personnel changes at NIFA since relocation to Kansas City, Missouri, including myself. I am about 11 months old now with the agency. On this team, co-leading are Dr. Mark Mirando, who is also part of the Division of Animal Systems. We also have a new division director who's relatively new, Bob Godfrey. Some of you all may know him from the University of the Virgin Islands in St. Croix, who's been with us for a little over a year now. We also have Dr. Honda Chen, who's a part of the Division of Food Safety, as well as Dr. Keith Harris, who is part of the Division of Family and Consumer Sciences. So just a brief overview about NIFA. NIFA is the extramural funding agency under USDA's mission of research, education, and extension. These definitions are important because you'll definitely need to address them as you turn in your proposals. The research aspect provides answers to complex societal issues within agriculture, while education supports schools, universities, and colleges in training the agricultural workforce, while extension provides the knowledge gained through research and agricultural workforce, which can then be put into practice. If you look at these topics here that are covered by NIFA, it spans agriculture, going from advanced technologies to animals, to business and economy, natural resources, education and environment, all the way through food and nutrition security. We do have international aspects as well as going to plants. So pretty much any aspect of agriculture that you're interested in investigating, there probably is a NIFA program which addresses it. So here we're going to talk a little bit about the application, the information, and the resources available to you. I think that this is probably the most important slide, if not one of the most important slides. There have definitely been changes to the RFA, including the addition of this program. So if you were an early bird and downloaded that RFA, it is available with those changes in red. You can Google NIFA AFRI RFA to find this information, or you can utilize the link that is provided for you. These slides will be available later. There's also the AFRI grant application resources, where you can find them at www.nifa.usda.gov/AFRI-request application resources. So most importantly is the program code, which is A1731. This is an AFRI competitive program. And this program code name is long. It is the Center of Excellence for Meat and Poultry Processing and Food Safety Research and Innovation, which I will refer to as MPPFSRI for the remainder of the presentation. The application deadline is upon us. It is a short turnaround for this. We do recognize that. The applications are due Thursday, November 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. 5:01 will be late for these applications. The types of projects that will be accepted for this particular program are integrated only, and that will include research and extension, not separate projects, but incorporating research and extension together. The types of grants that will be accepted are standard grants as well as strengthening standard. Your standard grants traditionally in those definitions have teaching, research, or extension. These will need to include research and extension, as I mentioned previously. The strengthening standard grants, if you're not familiar, are going to be institution specific per AFRI definitions of grant types, and that's going to be dependent upon the university size, as well as other parameters, which would start your small to mid-sized institutions. And this particular grant is only going to be for 48 months, and there will only be one award for $5 million. And at this time, we do not anticipate that this will be renewed next year. So the purpose and priorities of this particular program incorporates both basic and applied science, as well as engineering and meat and poultry processing and food safety disciplines in efforts to promote the technological innovation, as well as lower the barriers for entry into the industry. The overall objective of this particular program is to support an innovative approach that's going to promote your food safety and is going to ultimately lead to lower barriers via publicly accessible research and overall development. So when you turn in your proposals, your research innovation may include the following things, but it's definitely not limited to the things that you see on the screen. And that's going to be your advanced manufacturing to develop scale neutral technologies for large, medium, or small processing plants, as well as machine vision and robotic automation for remote worker control of the equipment, as well as increasing your overall worker and food safety. So you may also utilize or apply the use of robotics or imaging to obtain precision cuts of the meat so that you will have a higher value as well as minimize your overall waste and trimming. As far as extension is concerned, again, you may include these things, but you're not limited to the scope that you see on the screen, which would include your regional partnerships with regional processing industry, your state and your producer communities, as well as technology transfer and efforts to fast track innovation by adoption by industry through public or private partnerships, as well as your small business innovation research programs and other effective programs. In addition to that, engagement with regional workforce development and technical assistance efforts and efforts to amplify the overall impacts of those technological innovations across the regional meat and poultry processing facilities, as well as your knowledge transfer to ensure worker safety, food safety, as well as process efficiency. So just a little bit about the application details for those of you all who are familiar with AFRI programs and application submission. It is similar. The applications are required to have a brief justification at the end of their project narrative. And all of that is within the 18-page scope limit provided for your narrative. And that needs to describe how they're going to meet the standards for the Center of Excellence based on the criteria that's described, that was initiated in the Farm Bill in 2014. And you can find that definition there. Also, your applications must include a plan that shows how you're going to share those results across the region in efforts to increase research and innovation. So going a little bit into the application details, all of them must include a logic model that's going to address or show how the program resources lead to a resilient food supply chain, as well as enhance socioeconomic opportunities and/or thriving in rural communities. It must also show how participants and stakeholder feedback will be used in efforts to design and implement these projects. Additionally, your applications must include a management plan that's going to clearly delineate the roles and responsibilities of each one of the entities that's going to be involved in this project. And in the ranking of the applications, the panel will consider the regional balance and the coverage of the diversity of the meat and poultry processing industries. Going a little bit into the application evaluation process, it's going to be the traditional NIFA peer review process that we utilize for all AFRI programs. You can find information about that if you're unfamiliar at www.nifa.usda.gov/NIFA peer review process and competitive grant applications. Should you have any questions about the application process, the contents that need to be included, staying within the page limit, please do not hesitate to contact any of the NPLs that you saw listed on one of the first screens there. I just want to reiterate the deadline for this particular program is November 3rd at 5 p.m. Eastern. The application deadline has turned out to be 45 days after the release date of the updated RFA. And we do realize that that is an entirely quick turnaround, and we will appreciate your efforts. If you need to find those application materials, you can find them at www.grants.gov. And again, please feel free to reach out to any of the NPLs in efforts to get answers to your questions. This is NIFA's non-discrimination statement. If you feel as though you're going to need some additional resources, please make sure that you contact us so that we can make sure that those accommodations can be made for you. If you all have any questions, we'll take them at this time. One personnel person that I forgot to mention is our program specialist, Sierra Casetas, who will be taking your questions in the question and answer section. Thank you so much for your time. We'll take all of your questions now.
Perfect. And excuse me, at this time, we have one question that I think would be great to answer. Mark, would you like to go ahead before we get into that?
No, I'm good.
Okay. The question is, should no more than 2/3 of funds be allotted to research? Extension in the meat and poultry industry may not require as many resources as to educate farmers and ranchers.
Okay. I guess I'll go ahead and answer that question. So yes, our guidelines for integrated projects are no more than 2/3 of the budget on any one function and no less than 1/3 on the remaining function or functions. In this case, it's research and extension. So no more than 2/3 on any one and no less than 1/3 on the other. Doesn't have to be 2/3 research and 1/3 extension. It could be 2/3 extension and 1/3 research, or if that's most important for the project, or it could be 50-50. But the limitations are no more than 2/3 on any one function and no less than 1/3 on the other function.
Thank you, Mark. And at this time, we do not have any other questions in the Q&A box. So if anybody has any questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, and we will get those answered. And one question that just came into the chat is, do we need to cover both meat and poultry?
So the RFA doesn't specify that you need to cover both meat and poultry. I would suggest you let the application and what you're proposing to do drive that to determine whether it needs to include both meat and poultry. It may be that for some applications that makes sense, but for other applications, it would might spread them too thin. So the short answer is it not necessarily. Does it need to cover both meat and poultry? And my stock answer here is, as you're writing the application, do what makes the most sense as you're preparing, as you and your team are preparing that project narrative.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions? All right, I am not seeing any come up in the chat or in the, I spoke too soon. Does the research innovation need to include all 3 elements in the slide? So I'm not sure.
All 3, I'm not sure what's elements. If we're talking about functions of research, education, and extension, this is research and extension only, but maybe there were those priorities that were listed, purpose and priority slide. I think she actually had 3 on one slide and 2 on the next. So look at the
Slide
R.
Slide 8. Slide 8.
Right.
Okay, let me pull that up for you. Let's be specific.
Right. There were three and then 2 and then 3 extension. Right. And so it doesn't need to include all of them. These were the RFA provides examples, and it prefaces those examples with or can include, but are not limited to. So we want to see what we want to have is the best project, and that makes the most sense, and not restrict it to exactly what's in the request for application. So you have a latitude as long as you can justify it, and justifying it as being important to the industry.
And there was an additional, so they were talking about the 3 areas: advanced manufacturing, worker safety, and precision cuts were what this this applicant was getting at.
Okay. No, again, I let the application, the focus of the project, drive what you include there. You may spread the application too thin by trying to do everything. These grants, there's a lot of area that can be covered. I don't think it can all be covered in one single grant. So focus on what you think are the best, the most important, or the work you can do the best. Go with that.
We have one other question. Can the proposed center name be different from what is listed in the RFA? And the question, yes.
Yeah. Yes, your proposed center can be this is Center of Excellence 4, and that's the program title. So any Center of Excellence proposal name that you create that would fit within that title, some aspect of meat and poultry processing and food safety, research and innovation would fit. So it's not restricted. You do not need to have that title in there.
Perfect, thank you. And as we're waiting for some other questions, I do want to mention that this recording and the slides will be available on the website. They will also be in the NIFA update. So if you do not get those NIFA update emails and you would like them, you can subscribe for them on the NIFA website at nifa.usda.gov. So feel free to check that out.
And if you can't find this recording and these slides, reach out to Camila or Hangda or Keith or me, and we will provide you with the link where you can download it from. You and your colleagues can download it.
And again, if you have questions about your proposal prior to submission, please do not hesitate to contact us. After the deadline date may almost be too late. So please make sure that you contact us with any questions or concerns that you may have.
And I'll say the sooner the better. Don't wait till that last week or the last day before the submission if you can avoid it.
Or
You can get your
458.
questions in, send them to us as they arrive.
And do not feel as though you're contacting us too many times. We're here for you.
There are no other questions that are coming up in the chat or the Q&A box.
All right. If there be no more questions, we want to thank you all for your time today. Enjoy the rest of your day.